and Fridays are for art. I hope that we will have some audience today because I know that it's quite a busy day in the country, especially in the Eastern Cape. Hey, may the gods of Black children be with us today. It's a lot going on. Welcome to the Artist INDABA. Obviously, you know the importance of artists. We reflect society back to society and we see how we can become better. Today, we're going to speak. Oh, the Artist INDABA, of course, is a collective of artists, a movement of artists where we're trying to make the arts a better space for our children, our children's children. Obviously, we come from a space where it was very exploitative. So now we're trying to have these conversations where we remove the veil and show you the reality of the arts, teach younger people. A lot of us are your big sisters, your big brothers. We have experience, and now we want to create this platform where we can give back to you. Obviously, you know, Ngesintu, storytelling is how we pass knowledge and wisdom from generation to generation. So this morning, we've got KETHIWE to come to us and speak to us about storytelling and the film industry. What is the responsibility of a filmmaker? How does it work in TV? You know, just the whole drill, the whole drill. Mam KETHIWE, good morning, good morning, good morning. Do you want to unmute yourself there?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for agreeing to spend time with us, the art community. Thank you for giving of yourself and your energy. Let me first by giving you the platform to introduce yourself and give us a bit of, you know, before COVID, everybody knew who's famous or everybody did who's done what. But there's been a complete reset, and now we have to introduce ourselves to the new generation and be like, do you know who I am? See, this is what I did in my time. So can I give you your moment to do you know who I am?
I'm not really great at do you know who I am, but I'm basically a filmmaker, have been for my whole life, really. Well, since I was in my 20s, and have made films, have been in documentary, in fiction, and have also I was at the SABC for some time as head of drama, and ran that portfolio for a few years. But basically, I'm a filmmaker who really thinks story is important.
Why would you say that film is important? I mean, let's unpack the importance of storytelling and the importance of your role as filmmakers. Why are you guys here? And please don't feel rushed. Take your time. This is your platform. We are here to listen.
I think story is it's almost the oldest tool that we have in the world. You know, people sitting around the fire and telling stories to each other. Those stories were to help make sure that you didn't get eaten by a lion, or you didn't get go down a hole or whatever. There were cautionary tales that we told to each other. And humanity globally has not stopped doing that. Storytelling, actually, today, as we speak in AI, storytelling is going to be the most critical tool in the technological age. It is the most critical tool. You know, people talk about STEM and, you know, science, technology, and maths, all of these things. They're good. Don't get me wrong. But the most critical tool that we're going to have as we move forward is storytelling.
Why?
Because storytelling is going to be on, as we speak, everybody's scrolling. We're listening to everybody's stories. We're listening to story all the time. And storytelling is informing us about who we are, what we want, where we are in the world, and your own special algorithm that just speaks to you is telling you the stories they think you want to hear. So it's a very sometimes I think it's invasive. I, I am a little bit addicted, guys, scrolling, and it's not good. But it is such an important tool, okay, as we move forward. So I don't want people to think that because of AI we're going to lose our jobs, because of AI we're not going to be able to tell stories. AI needs us to tell stories. AI can kind of like manufacture a story, but it's not going to be able to tell the stories like we humans can. We can use AI as a tool, but storytelling in leadership, in all sorts of aspects of our lives is going to be really, really critical. You hear people in politics talk about what's my narrative, what's my story. So when we talk about story, we're not talking about this thing which people feel, oh, you're just an artist. Oh, what do you do? They are going to be understanding the value and power of storytelling for us and for the generations to come. And I think, I come from a family of storytellers. So my mother was a storyteller. My grandmother used to tell Inganagwane, and she was the best in her whole district. And then my great grandmother, she used to write poetry. And she was like this. She was the only. She was the least loved wife in my great grandfather's many wives harem of many women, but she told these stories. And so storytelling, and it's not just me who has that kind of legacy. It's most of us who have that kind of legacy, where our great grandmothers and mothers and people, they told the stories of our community. And for me, if we don't begin to harness the power of our story, for the last 200 or 350 years, whenever Europe came and descended on us and kind of invaded our space, they have told the wrong story about us. They have told a story that is in their imaginations about who we are. And because of the power of storytelling, we have taken it on and kind of think that that is our story. And it isn't. Our story is complex, it's beautiful, and it holds us in the universe. And we, when we talk about Ubuntu, it's kind of, it used to be like, oh, Ubuntu, and it became a bit of a slogan, but it really talks about what Africans are, where they come from, how they relate to each other, because we respect human beings. I'm a human being because you're a human being, and my humanity comes through you and from you. I cannot be a human without you. And other cultures don't necessarily have that deep sense of respect for other humans. So I think if we begin to really harness our story and the way our story descends on the world, like I'm a filmmaker who has told romantic comedies. I used to run a drama department where we did soap operas. I've done all of these things, but sometimes I question. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I question whether those are the stories we should be telling each other. I question whether we should be telling each other stories about how, so we have, fighting and screaming. And I'm a bit of a screamer myself, but, fighting and screaming and shouting. And when we are calm and beautiful and our pentameter on the world is slow and deliberate. And we're not telling those complex stories about ourselves. We're almost sometimes telling stories that other people want to place on us, rather than us being the holders of our stories. I'm trying as a storyteller to re-engage with myself and question myself. How should I be telling my story? What genre should I be using? Is rom-com my genre? You know, our parents, my parents weren't great kissers. They weren't great romantics. They didn't do all of this, that kind of very Western demonstrative love. It was a deeper kind of love, which wasn't necessarily about romance. It was about holding somebody and holding your family, and your family's lineage being able to tell your stories. That's why when we tell our oh, now you see, this is my English side coming out. When we tell our isithakazelo sethu, you know, when we tell our name isn't just a surname. It is a whole history of names of those who came before us and what they did and how they did it. So we have this complex history, and I want to begin to unfold that in my stories. So, you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've recently done. I've recently made a film about my mother. It took me 10 years, guys, to really get that story together. It was a long thing, but it was really important for me to be able to tell my story, to tell the story of my mother, who she was, what she did, how she did it in the world, her writing, her. So I wanted to tell my story in not just like, oh, I'm telling my story because I'm telling a Black story. Now, I wanted to tell my story, and I think that we have the capacity to tell our stories, and our families and what they've done is amazing. You know, your family, just look at your own family. If you tell your family story, how complex and rich it is. So that's what I'm trying to do in many ways, is begin to really go deeper into what my story is and how that impacts the world, inspires the world, retells our story in the world.
You know, you raised such an important point about the type of content that we see on TV. When you say the performative ghetto of
Yeah,
blackness. So, is there,
I
because
love
you
that.
come
Yeah, I
from,
love the way you say that. Yeah.
well, it is what it is, you know, because that's what that's how we are sold on TV. And is there some kind of, like, why would African writers write stories like that portray Black people like that, when, as you say, there is so much depth in ourselves and in our true stories? So what's happening uh, in that space between the depth and the commercial space?
You know, it's who holds power. Okay. So I, as a storyteller, I need to feed my children, right? I need to make sure that they are being educated. I need to make sure that they grow. So I will tell stories that somebody else has constructed, because that's my job, right? To tell stories. So it's not, I don't want to, it's not about blaming people, right? It's about reconstructing for ourselves. And it might take a bit of time, because it's not an instant thing when we begin to see them for what they are. You know, they sometimes that performativeness, but they also downgrade our complexity, you know. And so once we begin to see them for what they are, we can begin to say, you know, in my town, there's this person, and I can tell their story. I don't have to use their name, but I can tell the story of what they've done and where they were and what they did. You know, so you can tell complex stories. So I think we just have to examine for ourselves, and you know, we're actually a new society. We're, you know, we're less than 50 years old in terms of global societies and in reconstructing who we are. So I think we just have to find our voice. And you know, we've been, you know, Africa is the richest continent on this planet, but somehow they've made our people the poorest people on this planet. I don't understand that. And what we need to do is understand that, understand how that their storytelling has reprogrammed us to be less than we should be. Okay, so for me, storytelling can really revitalize us as a society if we tell the stories that will enrich us. What stories they are, who's to say? I'm not a, you know, I can't tell you what story to tell, but we can have this discourse amongst ourselves about the kinds of stories we want to hear and tell.
And I asked this because we were having this discussion in last week's Indaba, saying that even the stuff that we see on Netflix, we can't identify ourselves in the characters that are being portrayed for us, especially you're in this romantic comedy space. You know, we've almost created these fake blacks that are sort of white, but they're not, because we know what privileged black people are like in our society, and they are not like that. So the characters that are being sold to us, like Asbazi.
Mm-mm. And we don't. I mean, really. I mean, I'm the least romantic person on this planet, actually. But I know I grew up in a family of deep love. My parents really loved each other. I don't remember them kissing. I don't remember them talking about how much I love you, AB. She loved AB so deeply. She didn't have to say it.
Yeah.
She traveled across the globe to be with him. But that didn't mean it was performative. I love that word. It didn't mean it was performative. It was about this real richness. And so when other people come in and we take their genre and we reinterpret it, it's not ours. And I've done those stories. I'm not trying to be this hero who hasn't been part of this mix. I have. But is that right? Is that something that we should be doing? Is that the kind of story we should be telling? I mean, we've just come from 350 years of pain and suffering. And we are not telling stories of healing. We're not telling stories of how we uncouple ourselves with the pain of this last 300, 400, I don't know, 500 years. But we're not telling those stories. And those stories are really, I don't know, we haven't told enough of them. We've got Shaga on, which is great. It's really great to tell stories of our history. I grew up in the United Kingdom, and every, there's this kind of genre which is called the bonnet drama, and it's always in the past, and it's always about people who lived in the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century, and who they were and how they spoke, and Mr. Darcy, and they're telling their history. They're telling their history to their children all the time. And we know their history often better than we know our own history.
Yep.
Because they tell their story. They tell who they are, and they give that to the world. But we think we're these contemporary versions of ourselves. It's all about, now. I'm not saying that we mustn't tell stories of the now and this moment, but we have really rich stories to tell about our history. Mapungubwe, who's telling the story in fictional terms of Mapungubwe? Who's telling the story of Great Zimbabwe? Why aren't we were trading with the Far East before the Europeans ever thought about it. Where is it?
So, as you're rightfully saying, if these are the stories that filmmakers and storytellers should be telling, but now they're more focused on creating this imaginary black, and even when you look at the producers, in the past it used to be white producers, but now the black producers have replaced those white producers, but they haven't changed anything. So it's still the same systematic challenges. It's still one person getting rich off everybody's back. Any thoughts?
I mean, they might get a little bit wealthy, but I don't even think they get really rich. Let's be clear. Like, being a producer, you're not getting rich, right? It's really hard work, and all of that stuff goes back into the system. If an actor doesn't come, that's a whole day. Who's paying for that? The broadcaster isn't paying, it's the producer who's paying. If something happens on the set, it's not the broadcaster's paying, you're paying as the producer. It's not necessarily this wealth-making game that people think it is. I wish it were. I wish it were. It's much more complicated than that. Producers do hold the reins of a certain level of power, but they have a broadcaster who comes, or a broadcaster or someone who tells them how to do what they're doing. It's not them who's necessarily constructing the way the story is told. There's someone telling you how to tell that story. There is somebody who, on their platform, they want stories told in particular ways. That's capitalism. We are at the mercy of our masters. I'm not an anti-capitalist, but I want to us to understand that there are power relationships in this. So if Black storytellers are telling it, it's because somebody else wants it. It's not because that's necessarily the story that they always want to tell. Because storytellers have huge piles in their house, like stories, and I've got this one and this one, and then nobody chooses that one; they choose another one. So yeah, it's a construct that we live in, and we're not. It's not. But I think we can be more nuanced in our storytelling, even if we're following some of the things that are wanted from above. How do we bring nuance to that? Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I think we've touched.
Yeah.
I think we've touched on an interesting nerve, the relationship between the producer and the creative, because we see this conflict happen in the music industry as well. When someone has got an independent record label and then they build up an artist and produce everything, and then the artist feels like they haven't got it, they don't get enough from their own art, which is the same case in filmmaking and production, TV production. So what is it about the producer that entitles them to so much of the pie?
I don't know about, I'm not a music person, right? But in film, you know, you get a budget which are too small anyway. Let's start there. The budgets are often too small for the task you're given. Excuse me. And the task you're given is to tell sorry, this big story with all these characters, all these things, and you have to make that thing work, and you have to pay everybody, you have to get equipment, you have to get, so there are some producers who can make a lot of money, but the vast majority of producers aren't in that position. They have the story which they tell for 13 weeks. For the next 3 years, they've got nothing. For the next 4 years, they've got nothing. So it's not that simple that these producers are these devils. I'm a producer, so I don't want to be in the devil mode. but it's true. You're not. I mean, I know producers, right? And most of them aren't like driving Lamborghinis, guys. A lot of them, maybe it's my generation of producers who are not driving Lamborghinis, but I really don't think there are a huge number of really wealthy producers. There might be a small elite who get a lot of programs, you know, who get a lot of series or something, and then they might be able to build wealth. But if you're an ordinary producer who gets a program then, and then you're not making huge money. That's the reality. I don't know about music. I know about film and television. And particularly now, the industry is in a crisis because the SABC, who used to be the largest storyteller in South Africa, nothing. They don't really have a lot of money, enough money. The Mnet has just been bought, and they're trying to sort themselves out, or MultiChoice, and you know, the French are coming in, so there's not much work happening. The DTI has kind of phased out for the time being. I don't know why. They phased out the rebate. So that's meant that a lot of people who had been starting to really use the rebate well aren't able to use the rebate to make the story and own their own IP. And we're actually in a storytelling economy. This economy, AI, is a storytelling economy. So we're in a really bad place at the moment in terms of storytelling in the country. There is, you know, Netflix is investing in South African stories, a particular kind of South African story. But we don't have the width of and breadth of storytelling that we should be having now. And all of these things that have in the last, you know, I mean, SABC has been had issues for a few years. The The DTI rebate hasn't been working for nearly 3 years. So all of these things have come to a moment. And I think that what I would say to government in terms of the IDC is that globally we're in a storytelling economy. This is a storytelling economy, and you're stopping us from participating as a country. And story is soft diplomacy. You know, we're having a bit of an issue with the Americans here. You know, we're misperceived over there because we're in a particular group, like we're in BRICS. What does that mean? And why aren't we telling our soft story to the world? We're being told we're committing genocide. You know, all of this stuff is happening now, and we don't have story available to unpack and demystify those myths and tell our true story. Story is really important, and at this time we are in a storytelling economy. There's no doubt about that. AI has brought that about. And storytellers feel that we're not going to have, you know, the tool of AI is not going to disavow us of being storytellers. We will be, and it will enable us to tell more complicated stories, right? Because each one of us will be able to tell our story, right? But we need to have the support of government at this time. In Europe, they are really, really supported to tell their story. You know, Europe is in decline. So they understand more than ever why they must tell their story. We're in ascendancy, and yet we're not telling our story. We're not being given the tools to tell our story. So, yeah.
There's also, you know, there was a comment about music. Let me just put it up here, because that's always an issue also in terms of music usage. There seems to be an issue there, which we always say to production houses to put 10% of the budget for music only. This will assist to solve the music issues. Unfortunately, some producers, production houses think of music last. Have you guys found that there's an issue with music and publishing?
Well, music is really expensive, guys. It is expensive. It is. I mean, when you think about it, it is a really important tool in storytelling. But you can put 10% in. But if you you know, like, I get budget, and there are that many things I have to do with it. So everybody is getting less. It's not just music. If I was able to tell a story for 60 million rand, for sure I would give 10%. I would give I don't know, so it would be 10%, but I'd give a good chunk to the musicians. I would, you know. But if I'm getting 3 million to tell that story, and I have to divide it between equipment, transport, crew, locations, costume, art department, post-production, pre-production, then music becomes one of those things. It's not special. It's, how do I divide this little money that I have? So it's not about being disrespectful to musicians, but it's about the reality of how much resources do you have to make what you have to make.
Sure, that is because that's always the issue. It's about how do you split up the budget? Who's more important than who? You know, I think there's a big conflict between who feels that they deserve
actors. I even forgot to say actors. Goodness.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot. It's more complicated than at first sight, and that this person is a mean person. That person is having to manage these resources to produce a product, and that product is really expensive to make. Really expensive to make.
Do you think that perhaps then would it help if there was like a policy around how to break down budgets for films or documentaries that specifically say this percentage goes to this percentage, and everybody has to comply to exactly that same blueprint?
You can't do that in creativity because you know, my film might be a film that is music, has a huge music propensity in it. It's got lots of music scores, the people sing, it's a musical. Let's say it's a musical. Then music, of course, is going to be much more expensive. And sometimes I might be in a period piece. Costume is going to be more expensive than, so you sometimes, and you know, like the cars might be more expensive because I'm in period, or I'm doing sci-fi. So the art department is more expensive. So you can't say you must spend this much, because it depends on the product. It depends on what you're producing and what story you're telling. So it's too you can't have that rule. I don't know what the word is, but it's too difficult to have that rule because every product is different and
I
every,
hear you.
yeah.
I hear you. That's why we have these conversations. I need to, so that we can figure out how do we do it so that there's less conflict and more production and more synergy amongst the different disciplines. But I totally hear you. So you are working on you've got a film coming out at the Joburg Film Festival from the 3rd to the 8th of March. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I mean, I told you a little bit about it, but it's the story of my mother. It's called And She Didn't Die. My mother was a writer, Loretta NGCOBO, and she was she wrote several books and was an essayist and was one of the early feminists in terms of what she wrote and why she wrote it. She wrote about, one of her most important books was And They Didn't Die, which was about rural women and rural women's struggle through apartheid. And she talked about the strength of rural women, whereas often we see them as victims. She talked about who they were and what they did for their communities. So I made this film about her, and the film is a love letter, I suppose, to my mother, to say that you know, and Black women globally often are erased. They do things and they're not seen for what they do, and they're not placed in. You know, we've got Shakespeare everywhere, but we don't have you know, great South African writers in our own libraries or in our bookshops. So I wanted to tell her story and for other people to know. Of course, I loved her, and of course, she was my mother, and of course, there is that side of it. But it's telling the story of her life and her writing, and I use all sorts of different kinds. I use archive, contemporary footage. There's also footage of me and her 20 years ago. There's, yeah, and then there's readings from her. So it's a very complex mix of things. Yeah, it's an important story for me to tell. And if I didn't tell it, nobody would tell the story of my mother. So I did it.
You know, it raises such an important point of archiving. And earlier on, we touched on this a little bit because you were talking about how the system expects you to do yizo type of content, whereas there's stories of Mapungwe and stories of our great writers, Mam Loretta. So then what's the solution then? Because if artists know that they're supposed to be archiving, but there's a commercial pressure, so what's the solution?
I mean, I think archives is a whole discussion all on its own, because the cost of archives is huge. And other people own that IP, but some people, there's a big argument around archives. So I don't want to get into that. I'm having my own debates around archive as we speak. But I think what in another sense, what you're saying is that we have to, how do we begin to using audio visual medium to tell our stories, and to tell I think we need government to be behind us, to back us, to be our backstop. They did do it, and there was lots of stories that were beginning being told, but we as Black filmmakers, really, it's only in the last few years that we really used the rebate. Before, it was a lot of the money went abroad. I'm not saying we shouldn't have an incentive for people who come and shoot in our country, because they bring resources and money into the country. But if we can get a rebate that really enables us to tell our story, and it doesn't depend on a platform to tell us what story to tell, and we're able to use, YouTube. You can put your story up. You don't have to have a streamer or a broadcaster. We're in the most democratized time. I can't say the word. Democratized time of storytelling. Everybody's able to tell their story. So, but we also we can do these, I can use my cell phone and tell a story, but we need richer, more complex stories to be told about us. And that requires government backing and support, because it's soft diplomacy. It's them telling their story. It can't be Trump telling us that we've got genocide. That's because our story is not out in the world. Nobody knows our story, really, because we haven't given the resources to storytellers to go out into the world. Yet we're watching all of this stuff, one battle after another, Sinners, all these stuff that were nominated for the Oscars. Where's the African story in the Oscars? So and they're telling their stories. Are we? Are we telling enough of our stories?
Do we have the resources?
It's resource. I mean, I'm telling you guys, it's resources are choices. What are the choices our government is making? Is it okay? That might be a problem. I was going to say something that's going to be like,
Fall back. Hold it back, sister. Hold it back.
but if we think about it, our education should have been a priority in the beginning, an investment in educating our children, turning our townships into places where people can live. I mean, people do live there, but real beautiful, livable spaces which aren't compromised by sewage, which has escaped from here, or there's no water, there's no electricity. Those should have been our priorities, giving dignity to our people, right? I mean, I'm not a politician, so I don't make those choices, but it's a choice. It's nothing but a choice. Instead, during COVID, we go and borrow huge sums of money which are then misappropriated, and we still owe that money. And that means that we can't pay people. So it's choices that we make. And that's the truth. So if we're making the right choices and saying our story is an important choice at a global level, because the way in which, everybody's talking about speed coming to Africa. I mean, I love the boy, love him for doing what he's doing. But guys, as if we can't tell our own story. I mean, I love him, but we are dependent on the African story being told by a young guy, 20 years old, which is fine. I love that. But there's something a little bit wrong in that we're not being funded to tell our story. We're not funded. I mean, I do think because it's very expensive to make stories, right? To make music, to make art and we don't put enough investment into creatives, because people think that's they're just playing games. But really, we're telling our story. We're retelling our story. We're constructing who we are in the world. We're not taking the colonial myths and accepting them. We can do that if we're giving the resources. And then when our president goes and sits in the Oval Office, he's an equal, because he has a narrative behind him, and not a false narrative that somebody has just said that they're going to construct. That false narrative, when he's sitting in the Oval Office, makes him lesser. And we he was brave enough to go there. I'm not sure if I would have done myself, but he was there. He sat and he talked. But if he had the story of who we are now, he wouldn't have to be in that situation of being on the back foot.
Now, a technical question, because you've mentioned it so many times, but those of us who are not in film don't quite understand. What is rebate and how does that work?
Okay, so I mean, the government was really great. It was a really good job, and they were one of the first countries to create a really strong rebate. A rebate is they say this sector needs support, and you apply for money from government, and once you've made it, they give you money back. Okay, so you have to find money in the interim to pay for it. So the rebate is the Department of Trade and Industry rebates lots of industry. The motor industry is rebated. They get money from government to have a motor industry. You get money for I mean, I don't know which other industries, but a whole lot of industries are given money, because trade and making sure that our industry is strong is part of a global thing. So everybody does it all over the world. And so film was given a rebate. And that rebate incentive was in order that we make films in this country. So the first incentive was really around attracting big Hollywood productions. So if you know Cape Town, a lot of their industry was built on that rebate, because the Hollywood productions would come and they would get some money back. So it was cheaper for them to make their film in South Africa than anywhere else. And all of a sudden now, globally, rebates are everywhere. So there's lots more places for people to choose. And instead of enriching our rebate, we've kind of like demolished it, and it's not working anymore. And we are on this hiatus And we're hoping that it will come back in the next. We hope this year, because we've got films to make, Guy. We've got
Tell me
films.
something. Tell
Mm?
me, how would it benefit our government to pay rebates to Hollywood films? Like, why would American producers come and use their money and then we must
So
subsidize?
let's say they've got a $22 million production, right? And they spend 22 million in the country. That's 22 million we didn't have, right? So we give them 20% of that 20 million back, which makes the cost of their production cheaper. So it's you're attracting investment into your economy by having a rebate.
Oh, so it's not the whole amount. They don't pay back the whole amount.
No. They pay back a
Oh,
percentage, and it's, I think it's 20. It's about 20% for servicing productions. It's about for film, for South African filmmakers. It's about 40%. They had a 50% for emerging. We don't know what emerging is, guys, but anyway, emerging filmmakers. So there was so there were different levels of filmmaking, but so there's an emerging filmmakers, which was basically for Black filmmakers. There was another one which was basically for all South Africans, and then there's an foreign in rebate. So there were different levels. I didn't kind of look at all of it, so I'm not saying it all right, but that's roughly what it is.
so interesting. And then for emerging filmmakers, how do you advise that they look for funding for their films? How does one, if you've got a film that you're working on or a concept, what's the process around getting out there?
It's really difficult, as I was saying. People aren't. There used to be, the SABC used to commission a lot of work. That's not happening anymore because there's no coffers. We're paying back the World Bank, but anyway, there's so we're in a situation where there's not structurally, we don't have a lot of places to go and make films and get films. But you know what I say? This toy, right? It's a really great thing. And you can make your films, and you can make films on this, right? And it can teach you how to make a story, because the more you make, the better you get. I mean, you should be reading up about story structure, how you structure a film, how you make a film. There are all sorts of tutorials on these little boxes that we have, right? They've got a whole lot of information in them, right, that you can use to teach yourself how to be a filmmaker. And then you can use this same device to shoot your film. And then when you've shot a lot of these, and I've got a kind of like a lot of short films that I've made, then you can say to someone, why don't you invest in me and put money into my film? But we've got these things. So let's not forget that when I was, I've got a phone call. When I was growing up, I didn't have that. We didn't have a phone that we could. So that's why it's democracy has come to storytelling, because of this and because of technology. It's enabled us all to be storytellers. When I first started in the industry, you were first of all using film. film had to be processed in a lab, and that processing was really expensive. And you had very little, to buy film was really expensive. So it was out of our reach as common people to use. You would only, we used to have television, which was over there, and big blockbusters. But now we can do all these young people on telling their stories, their little comedy skits, that's storytelling. That's so we are able to tell complex stories with our little machine. You're mute.
Thank you. I see a comment from Busi saying this is a really thought-provoking conversation. I especially appreciated KETHIWE's considered thoughts on the centrality of storytelling for South Africans, Africans, and human beings in general. So thank you, Sis KETHIWE. I wanted to know, lastly, because we should be in conversation with our Department of Arts and Culture, and perhaps they do watch these platforms. Where do you think they can improve themselves and kind of meet filmmakers halfway?
Well, the Department of Arts and Culture funds the NFEF, and the NFEF has had the same funding, I think, for 20 years or something like that. Something crazy. Inflation, blah, 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 has happened. Cost of living, they call it cost of living crisis elsewhere in the world. We're so cool because we don't call it a crisis. We just know that we've got to pay more, and we do anyway. So we need the NFEF to get a bigger budget. We need we need policies that enable us to have a bigger film fund. That might not be the NFEF. It might be really great if we had another film fund as well, which enabled us to make more films. So we need more instruments, really, for filmmaking. And I think that there are several departments who are in our sphere. So it's not just arts and culture. It's the Department of Trade and Industry. It's the Department of, I've forgotten what they're called now. They used to be called Department of Communications. I forgot their name. But there's several departments which are in our area and should be putting big resources into funding us. The Department of Communications, it's not called that anymore, guys, sorry. But they help fund the SABC. But we should be saying that is a real strong tool for our democracy, for ourselves in the world. If we don't have a strong SABC, we don't have an ability to tell complex stories that are not just commercially driven, right? We can tell stories of our histories and stuff because we have a strong public broadcaster. So I think that's something that we really need to talk about. All of these departments doing their part to enable us to become a strong member of the storytelling economy. We are in that economy now. It is no longer just about STEM, guys. Storytelling is critical at a global level. And our soft story in terms of diplomacy around the world is going to be through storytelling. So government, come on, guys. Come on. We love you. We love you. Well, sometimes. But, so we want you to help us tell your story so that it's easier for you to do your job around the world. And we're in a very dangerous place at the moment in the world because the rules are being torn up all the time. And story is going to be able to shore up where we stand. look, if we look at Israel, they are investing a lot in story. They are investing in storytelling. They know that now, when the world has because of the Zionist, the Zionist atrocities that have been happening, they know that story is critical to reaffirming them. All right. America, I mean, and I don't want to talk about that because it's all complicated, because I'm not sure
Please,
what
please,
I'm not sure what
please, my dear, please. I
yeah,
also
yeah,
don't want to be assassinated.
no, it's all good, it's all good. But Europe is investing a lot in story. Okay. China invests a lot in story. So come on, let's tell the African story. And we're the only country who had investment and was able to tell our story. All these governments around the continent need to understand that if they don't tell their story, their story is that our resources were taken from us. Even today, we do not make our resources into product. They take those resources and they have the industrial base in Europe, in America, in China, all around the world. And we are the resource base, and we get this much for our resources, and they get that much for the manufacturing. So if we don't tell that story of why this is the richest continent and yet we're the poorest people, why? It's a structural thing. If we don't tell that story, who's going to know? Instead, we have the story of the wars and empire and all of these things that we consume, and we begin to believe that they're our reality. And yet we have a really complex story to tell about, Zambia in 1970 copper was huge, had a huge price on it. It's going up again because they really need it. But they devalued copper from something like 300 to 1 rand or something. I mean, I don't know the exact. And what did it do to that economy? It devastated it. What did they have to do? They had to borrow from the World Bank. When they borrowed from the World Bank, how much did they have to pay for their people and their hospitals and their education? They had this much, and they had this much debt. So that's a story we have to tell. We have to tell that story of how we've been impoverished as a continent. And then we're told, people tell, oh, Africans, well, all of this rubbish. You stole it from us. We must tell that story.
Thank you. Amen. Enkosi Mam KETHIWE siyabulela for taking the time to be with us on Artist Indaba and coming to bring in your insights and wisdom. We really appreciate it. I want to thank everybody who joined us online. Especially thank you to the Artist Indaba WhatsApp group who keep the engine burning so that we can platform different artists that can come and give to us. We come from we're always selling ourselves, selling. And in this platform, we make sure that our artists are actually giving us their wisdom and not selling themselves, and rather giving to us. So thank you for allowing us to extract from you, Sis KETHIWE. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I'm saying
it was a real pleasure. I talk a lot, and it was lovely to talk.
We enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely come check out your film at the film festival. Let me just quickly put on the details before we sign off for them to be able to get hold of you. There is Sis KETHIWE's Gmail coming through. There it is, zikethiwe@gmail.com. The film is called And She Didn't Die. It's at the Joburg Film Festival from the March the 3rd to the 8th of March. Enkosi kakhulu mama. Thank you so much, everybody,
so much for your platform.
for joining.
Thanks for doing this.
Really. Thank you.